What's up, everyone? This is part 3 of explaining the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. This part is Five Nights at Freddy's 3, and there's a lot to unpack in this game with all the secrets and minigames. Like I have said in previous parts, I might get stuff wrong, so don't yell at me too much. Here is a reminder to also subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it a lot, and if you enjoy the video, please leave a like. Enjoy. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 takes place decades after the events of the earlier games, roughly 30 years after the last Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location shut down. This time jump is crucial because it reframes the story not as an ongoing business tragedy, but as a cultural memory that refuses to die. The setting, Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction, is built on nostalgia, exploitation, and selective truth. The attraction markets itself as a haunted experience inspired by real rumors surrounding Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but it treats genuine suffering as entertainment. This creates a disturbing meta layer where real trauma is repackaged as fiction for profit. The building itself feels temporary and hollow, filled with props, broken parts, and recordings, which reinforces the idea that this is not a place of life, but a museum of unresolved guilt. Unlike previous locations, there are no children present during gameplay, emphasizing that the danger is no longer about prevention, but about reckoning with what has already happened. The central revelation of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is the appearance of Springtrap, the only true animatronic threat in the game. Springtrap is not merely another haunted machine, it is the physical embodiment of the series' central antagonist, trapped inside his own creation. The game heavily implies that Springtrap is William Afton, the man responsible for the murders of multiple children. This is a turning point in the lore because it confirms that the killer did not escape justice, but instead suffered a fate shaped by his own cruelty. Springtrap exists in a liminal state between life and death, with a human corpse fused into a decaying Springlock suit. This grotesque fusion represents poetic punishment. The man who used the suits as tools for murder is now imprisoned within one. Unlike the other animatronics, Springtrap's movements feel deliberate and intelligent, reinforcing the idea that this is not a confused spirit, but a conscious predator still driven by intent. The minigames in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 provide crucial insight into how William Afton became Springtrap. These scenes depict him dismantling animatronics one by one, seemingly attempting to destroy the evidence of his crimes. However, he is confronted by the spirits of the children he murdered, represented as shadowy, silent figures. In a moment of desperation, he hides inside a Springlock suit, believing it will protect him as it once did during his crimes. Instead, moisture and movement cause the suit to fail, crushing him inside. This moment is one of the most symbolically powerful in the entire series. William is not killed by the children directly, nor by law enforcement, but by his own arrogance and denial. The suit becomes a metaphor for the lies he hid behind, and when those lies collapse, they destroy him. This is not portrayed as a release or redemption, but as eternal punishment. Unlike earlier games, Five Nights at Freddy's 3 introduces the phantom animatronics, which are not physical threats, but hallucinations triggered by stress and failure. These phantoms are distorted versions of past animatronics, burned, broken, and flickering like corrupted memories. Their presence suggests that the horror is no longer confined to machines, but has invaded the player's mind. The phantoms represent the lingering psychological impact of the past, both for the protagonist and for the world that allowed these events to happen. They do not kill the player directly, but they sabotage systems and create openings for Springtrap to attack. This reinforces the idea that ignoring trauma does not make it harmless, it makes it more dangerous. The past, when left unresolved, actively undermines the present. The identity of the player character in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is intentionally vague, but many interpretations suggest it may be Michael Afton, continuing his journey to confront the legacy of his father. If this is the case, the game becomes deeply personal. Michael is no longer simply surviving against haunted animatronics, he is facing the literal remains of his father's crimes. The fact that the player must manage faulty systems rather than doors or weapons suggests helplessness rather than control. There is no way to fight Springtrap directly, only to delay and outmaneuver him. This creates a narrative where the protagonist is not seeking victory, but endurance, reflecting the emotional burden of living with inherited guilt. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 contains secret minigames that are widely interpreted as offering the closest thing to peace for the murdered children. In these scenes, the spirits are guided toward a final moment of rest, culminating in the image of the puppet collapsing as the children fade away. This is often seen as the good ending, suggesting that the souls have finally been released. However, the ambiguity of the game leaves room for doubt. The release is quiet and understated, lacking celebration or relief, which implies that even peace comes at a cost. The children are not remembered by the world, they simply disappear. This reinforces the series' recurring message that justice delayed is justice diminished. The game ends with Fazbear's fright burning down, an event loaded with symbolic meaning. Fire is traditionally associated with cleansing, and in this context, it represents an attempt to erase the past once and for all. Props, recordings, and artifacts tied to the tragedies are destroyed, suggesting a final break from the legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. However, the survival of Springtrap, hinted at in the final image, undermines this sense of closure. The fire fails to fully destroy what matters most, implying that evil rooted in denial and cruelty cannot be eliminated through spectacle alone. Burning the evidence does not undo the harm, it merely delays its return. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is deeply concerned with memory and how societies choose to remember or forget wrongdoing. Fazbear's fright exists because people are fascinated by rumors, not because they care about the truth. The game criticizes this detachment by showing the consequences of turning real suffering into entertainment. William Afton's continued existence as Springtrap demonstrates that guilt ignored becomes monstrous. Even decades later, the consequences of the original crimes continue to shape events. The game suggests that without accountability, history will repeat itself in new forms, haunting new spaces under new disguises. The Happiest Day minigame sequence in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 represents the emotional and thematic core of the entire game, and arguably the entire early storyline of the series. Unlike the other secret minigames, which are fragmented, eerie, and often confusing, Happiest Day is visually calm, bright, and intentionally simple. It depicts a child seated alone at a table while masked figures resembling the animatronics gather around, culminating in the child receiving a cake as the screen fades. On a surface level, this appears to be a birthday party, but within the context of the series, it is a symbolic reconstruction of something that was stolen. Child at the center of Happiest Day is most commonly interpreted as the spirit connected to the puppet, often believed to be the first victim. Throughout the series, the puppet is portrayed as different from the other animatronics, more aware and more purposeful, burdened with the role of guiding or protecting the other lost children. In earlier minigames, the puppet is shown giving life to the animatronics, an act that ensures the children are not erased, but also traps them in a cycle of fear and anger. Happiest Day reverses this process. Instead of giving life, the puppet finally lets go. The act of placing the final mask and completing the gathering signifies the puppet relinquishing control and allowing the spirits to move on. This makes the moment deeply bittersweet, as it suggests the puppet's long vigil is over, but only after enduring years of suffering and responsibility. What makes Happiest Day especially powerful is how indirect and fragile it feels. The player must complete multiple hidden minigames across different nights to unlock it, reinforcing the idea that peace is not accidental or guaranteed. It must be earned through effort, awareness, and persistence. This mirrors the narrative theme that closure requires confronting the truth rather than ignoring it. The children do not find peace because time has passed or because the building burned down. They find peace because the events that bound them were finally acknowledged and symbolically resolved. The imagery of masks in Happiest Day also carries significant meaning. Throughout the series, masks represent forced identities, disguises, and the loss of individuality. The children were hidden inside animatronic suits, stripped of their names and reduced to characters. In Happiest Day, the masks are no longer prisons but ceremonial symbols. They are worn briefly, not to trap but to unify. Once the moment is complete, the masks lose their purpose, implying that the children no longer need to define themselves through the machines that once confined them. This transformation reframes the animatronics not as monsters, but as temporary vessels for unresolved pain. Despite its hopeful tone, Happiest Day is intentionally ambiguous. The game never confirms what happens after the fade to black, and this uncertainty is crucial. The lack of explicit resolution suggests that peace does not erase what happened. The children are not brought back, the damage is not undone, and the world does not change in response. Happiest Day also contrasts sharply with William Afton's fate. While the children are offered rest through memory and acknowledgement, William remains trapped, decaying within Springtrap. This contrast reinforces the moral framework of the story. Those who suffered are allowed peace, while the one who caused the suffering is denied release. The game does not portray this as revenge, but as consequence. William's refusal to confront his actions binds him to them forever, while the children's pain, once recognized, is allowed to end. Ultimately, Happiest Day represents the series' most compassionate moment. In a story defined by neglect, secrecy, and repeated failure, it offers a small but meaningful act of restoration. It does not claim to fix everything, nor does it suggest that tragedy can be undone. Instead, it argues that remembering matters, that even symbolic acts can carry weight, and that peace begins when suffering is no longer ignored. In the dark, looping world of Five Nights at Freddy's, Happiest Day stands as proof that the past can be acknowledged without being erased, and that letting go, while painful, is sometimes the only way forward. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 functions as both an ending and a warning. It appears to close the story by confronting the killer and offering the possibility of peace for the victims, yet it deliberately avoids absolute resolution. The horror no longer comes from sudden jumps or crowded rooms, but from the slow realization that some actions permanently scar the world. By shifting the focus from survival to remembrance, the game elevates the series from a simple horror narrative into a tragedy about consequence. The past in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is not gone. It is watching, waiting, and walking the halls, proving that what is buried without truth will always find a way back. I hope you enjoyed this video about Five Nights at Freddy's 3, and leave a comment about what you think the happiest day means and when it takes place. Thank you for watching.